Hello, and welcome back to Talking Shop, a series of fun conversations with consummate concert artists, composers, opera singers, and choreographers. I'm so thrilled today to have as our guest Texu Kim, a tenured professor at San Diego State University, and whose compositions are performed by symphonies and ensembles all across the globe. Texu, it's so good to see you again. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. This is an
Good. Thanks so
honor.
much for being here. So, I'm going to start with the question I ask all of my guests right off the bat. What does being a composer and educator mean to you personally?
Hmm. So composition is something like a puzzle to me as a process. Of course, envisioning composition is a totally different thing. But when it comes to day-to-day composition of process, it's either making a sculpture like or oil painting as opposed to watercolors or um, making something out of Lego blocks more
Ah,
precisely. Yes, because um, I combine, well, it's all about decision making. Every second I make decisions about another second in other time, and then they are meant to be built to be something bigger. It could be really, really big. It could be somewhat big, but usually bigger than the decision I make at the time. And then I enjoy that process a lot. And sometimes the decisions are made by my preference, of course, what I like to have. And then sometimes it's about what others would need in my mind. I love working with other people, or even if it's not, there is no collaborator per se, even the imagined audience or imaginary performers are um, my collaborator. And then I consider what they would think, what they would hear, what they would feel. All these things inform my decisions. And it's like a multi-dimension puzzle in that way.
I really love that analogy, that imagery, the puzzle, but I want to go back to the Lego block thing. Where do these Lego blocks come from? That is so, I love that. That's just such a great visual, and it seems it's such an insight into your process. But where do the Lego blocks come from?
As a child, now, I mean, yeah, it's funny, but it's never hit me until just now that I actually played Lego a lot as a kid. Of course, I mean, many kids did, but I just forgot that was part of my life. And then,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, and I think it has something to do with my educational background that I will talk later, but I studied chemistry, and then chemistry gave me a good insight about the entire world universe is comprised of just a small unit of thing. Basically, there are arguments about what the smallest material is, but at the same time, it's fascinating that we all come from the same material, and then
Yes.
we become something totally different. And that's what I try to do with my music, I think, and combining different elements. Again, all these small Lego blocks would mean a motif or a note or a rest or a chord or a sound. Not quite one-to-one relationship, but all this idea uh, could become something bigger. And then that's exactly the same with Lego blocks.
Yeah, I love that because it's just such a wonderful concept. As musicians throughout our lives, we're through our music education, which I'll talk more about with you later, um, we accumulate all of these tools or these elements. I love what you said about elements. And
Mhm.
then those are at our disposal as composers to put together any way we like. So I think that's really, really fascinating. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
So
well, just one
yeah,
more thing. Sorry.
no, 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 go ahead.
Also, a beautiful thing about playing Lego is you can always change it later. it's not set. If you don't like something, of course, up to a certain level, probably you will be happy with 90% of what you have. But if something doesn't work, you can always change, wiggle around.
Yeah.
That's how I see composition as well, because it's a privilege that we can always edit and fix things later.
Yeah. Yeah. Stemming off of that, do you use software or do you write it on manuscript paper first and then convert it? So, because, if you're going to change things and move things around, in my experience, a lot easier to do that with software than it is. But a lot of people, do like to write it on the score on the manuscript first. How do you feel about that?
Usually, my own policy is writing things on manuscript first,
Okay.
and then put them into software. Of course, it could be flexible, especially depending on how quickly I should get things done, because it adds a lot more time. But that's how I was trained to write everything first, and then it's okay to change as I input things on the software, because again, the first draft manuscript would never be perfect. And then when I try to make it perfect on the manuscript, I had to just throw at least 100 pages. But now I'm going a little hybrid, so that I finish the draft, and then I don't mind changing it on in the software later.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask that because I think a lot of people are curious about that. How do composers do that? Do just some composers I know, like me, I completely write in the software, and yet,
Mm.
I have a lot of other friends who are composers like you, who write it on the manuscript first, and I realize that maybe that does stem from your educational background.
Mm.
So I didn't have that. I only started composing a couple of years ago, and software was kind of the thing. So it's just
Different
interesting to me.
generation.
I
Mm.
know it's interesting to me how everybody does it.
Mhm.
So stemming off of that, what do you feel? You've also already talked to us about something that's very unique about your process, I think. So what do you feel is unique about your work? What are you trying to convey in your music, and how does your process fuel that?
Mm. Again, I I feel like I am all about small things, and I believe big, beautiful uh, music could come from small, beautiful ideas.
Yeah,
We always think music should be grand. Yes, it is grand. As a result, it could be grand, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that music should come from grand idea. And then I think that's grand. There are lots of layers here, but uh, so, for example, we overlook lots of small things in our daily life. For
hmm,
example, just walking on the street, or uh, cars. I am now in LA. I'm visiting LA to do some errands, and then every day is full with
yeah,
stimuli in that it's different from every day, day to day, and then also even this hotel room looks a little different, and
yeah,
all those things could result in artistic inspiration.
yeah,
And then that's what I want to talk about. Sometimes it's very uplifting in to think about this. Sometimes it would meet uh, a deep emotion you might have inside,
hmm,
because if you think about small things, uh, something that our daily thinkings, our daily thoughts, that why am I different, why, and daily struggles could be part of it. And then, for example, we have a lot of homeless people around, and then that inspires me in a very different way,
hmm.
because it's overlooked. I'm interested in like all this overlooked stuff. Um, I don't know why. It's just how I am.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about composing is you don't know really why. The music, the inspiration comes to you, the music comes to you, it just flows. I mean, is that your experience? Do you share that?
Yeah, mostly I resonate this with Neruda. Pablo Neruda has a little this moment. I mean, it's a very common statement, but that is called the poem uh, came to me. Basically, that's the English translation,
Yeah,
and that's the same.
yeah.
Inspiration comes to me all the time. Uh, it's not necessarily a musical idea, but inspiration comes from everywhere to
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Almost up to the, because we worship all these struggling um, artists to strive to get some inspiration. So I feel a little guilty. So I spend a lot of time on crafting. That's how I compensate how quickly or how um, what is it? Uh, oh, I'm forgetting the word. Uh, how music comes from everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so I think this is a good place to delve a little bit more into your educational side because I know, at least for me, even though I didn't start composing formally until a couple of years ago, I am very aware of the fact that my entire musical life, my education, my experience, all the things I've done. I just finished a piano degree, a second bachelor's degree a couple of years ago. So, thank you. All of those, but all of that to say, the education blocks that to go back to your Lego analogy, the building blocks of that musical education combined with the life experiences. Talk to me a little bit about what you love about being an educator, and how that ties in with your compositional inspiration. I assume that you teach composition, or are there other things that you teach as well?
I teach the bigger, well, the teaching unit wise. So I teach both music theory and composition.
Yeah.
And by music theory, I mostly teach contemporary music theory. So around the beginning of 20th century and on, the music theory of that era is my specialty, not as a scholar, but as a teacher.
Hmm.
I love delivering the enthusiasm and love for those music. And I also teach orchestration, counterpoint, and then I teach composition.
So, talk to me about how those three areas are related because I feel that
Ah,
they're just so integrated. And I'd love to hear your view on that.
no, yeah, that's perfect because that's why I love doing this. I'm not just teaching composition, but teaching all these other things.
Hmm.
And when I teach music uh, theory of 20th century and 21st century music, that my emphasis is it's all related. So to be a good composer, you have to, well, being a composer means you will have to grind everything you have. I think I believe in it. And um, then what do you have? And then a big part of it is your musical knowledge and musical experiences,
Hmm.
both as a theory and history and philosophy and performance and listening, everything is related, and then that's healthy. And I don't know, that's the way I feel like I'm honoring my composition. And then I have enjoyed it so much, and I would love to share it with my students. And the same thing applies to those who do not necessarily compose. They have to try writing something in my theory class, um, both with their words and also with their music, because it deepens their understanding of how composition works. And then, even if they don't compose, they will work with composers,
Hmm. Hmm.
living or dead. And then that will allow them to understand, oh, this might have happened here because composition process is like this. And so everyone should know how to compose a little bit up to a certain level. And yeah, this is so important to me. uh, Creativity doesn't come from vacuum. And then so I feed all these things with, I hope to feed all these uh, inspirational chamber with healthy ideas and then lots of helpful information.
Yeah, I love that because, talking about theory, I'm not sure very many pianists, jazz pianists are, but classical pianists, I feel theory, they have a different relationship with theory and they're not always taught much theory in their lessons. That's been my experience anyway. And I think it's a really huge disservice to the student because the theory just, I've always viewed it as kind of a separate thing of, "Oh, yeah, I've got to learn this, right? It's so hard and I can't get my head into it." But then to think about it the way you said it, it's actually a window into your performance, is a window into getting to know the composer and just being able to assimilate the music in a different way. Do you feel that way?
Yes, two things actually you said very astutely. One thing I say in the beginning of my class every semester is we learn theory is not a rule. It's not just rules. It's way more important why the rules came. And then it's also important to understand that as a worldview of those people lived at that point, because theory has changed quite a bit,
Hmm.
which means it's flexible, but it comes with some sort of deeper principles. And then that's what people believed uh, that how music should work. And then there is something we can learn about it.
Hmm.
And then if you go all the way into the core, you can take something out and then make your own stuff. And then
Oh.
also, theory is not just a theory when you perform, because theory, again, what we need to focus more is how music work. For example, um, Webern has this very sparse music, and then if you understand the notes and then the tempo and then the direction and interval and all these things shape the phrase
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
form.
Yeah.
And that's way more important than which chord is this, to me at least.
All those little bitty components that don't seem like a lot by themselves, but really are a huge portion of the entire work. That's really fascinating. And to me, that's really exciting because it opens up, one thing I love about music and dance and everything else is that there's always more. You never really get to that place where you're like, okay, I'm here, I've arrived. You're always a student, you're always learning. And um, I learn a lot just from composing, just, and I'm sure that, if talk about your growth as a composer, maybe from when you were younger, and how did you decide you wanted to do this in the first place?
When I was very young, like I'm talking about my age 4, and I began studying the piano. It
Hmm.
was nothing uncommon. It's very interspersed idea that you study piano or some other instruments and taekwondo in Korea, basically.
Yeah.
I didn't learn taekwondo, but or any other martial arts, but my mother was into educating me into music because she is very a religious person,
Hmm.
evangelical church. She
Hmm.
she still is. Then back then she believed that me studying music would make me to be a good pastor.
Our mother's
No,
dreams for us.
right? Yes, that was her dream, and it's um, and she decided somehow I was going to be a pastor. Yeah, and but I think I was very talented, or so did my teachers
Hmm.
tell my
Hmm.
parents. And then,
Hmm.
um, so I wanted to become more and more uh, a musician.
Yeah.
But it was again my age 4 or 5, because I was probably a year into studying music, and I enjoyed a lot. And then I also studied the violin from age 7, and my violin teachers also told my parents that I was talented. So I thought, okay, this is meant to be. I should become a
Yeah.
musician.
Yeah.
And but it was on and off process because um, it takes a lot of family resource to raise a child to be a musician, especially in Korea.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There, in my generation, the competition was extremely high
Hmm.
to become a musician. We grew up with looking at a few extremely internationally successful musicians, and Korea is a small enough country. Once your name gets that level, people just or the entire country looks at them, and then they want to raise their child or children not to be such.
Yeah.
So it was a big competition, and it was exhausting, and so. Long story short, I didn't make it to art middle school, not even high school, art middle school, um, because, well, whatever reason. And then at my seventh and eighth grade, I realized I was also good at science and math.
Hmm.
And then, so that was a perfect timing and perfect subject to be interested in at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So, and so I went to a lot of summer and winter um, science camp run by the government, and I became more and more serious in science, and uh, eventually I became the Korean national representative for the International Chemistry Olympiad in my
Wow.
senior year in high school.
Wow.
So I still loved music, and that was my passion. But you know, at that point, I thought, okay, I should major in chemistry. That's just
Hmm.
meant to be, and that's what I did first. And and then the thing was, there was no AP system in Korea, and I learned up to uh, around college, junior level, uh, before getting into college. So uh, I spent a lot of time. I had a lot of extra time, which I used uh, in to do more music. And
Yeah.
then by music, that what I was saying, what I did was um, I worked in a praise and worship band for 4 or 5 years. I became almost professional at that point as a praise and worship band
Uh-huh.
musician.
Uh-huh.
And then, so that around that time, I was a senior as a chemistry major with all these musical experiences. And then I realized that I had no vision for chemistry. I was good at it. I was good at getting good grades,
Wow.
but I didn't know what to do. I had some vague idea. I wanted to go to pharmaceutical industry, but at that point, I had never contacted any labs because I spent all my time doing short mission trips and all these services.
Hmm.
So I took a year off at that point, um, just before a semester before graduating, and then I went abroad uh, to France,
Uh-huh.
and I studied French and a little bit of jazz. I was into Latin jazz, so I studied. I had studied a lot of Spanish
Hmm.
to study in Mexico, but my mom was vehemently against the idea to send me all. I mean, not send that. Mexico was an unknown
Right.
place to Korean people at that
Okay.
point.
Okay.
So and when my mom's friend approached my mom that, oh, I have a room in my house, and then if Texu comes to teach my son as a built-in tutor, he has a free housing. And then my mom was thrilled.
There you go.
Deal, yes. France, Mexico, all the same. Go to France, and then just that's how. And I didn't oppose to it. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
spent a year in France, and then that's when I realized how uh, I didn't have to conform to the society. As you know,
Wow.
I had a whole lot of expectation on me, imposed on me by the society, I thought, but it was actually by myself that I
Mhm.
have to live in certain way.
Mhm.
And then, okay, well, I did study chemistry, and if I feel like I owe the government or the people, then I should work extra hard in music, then I can probably do something similar in music. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
that's when I decided to go back to music, and I finished the degree, and then I became a junior again as uh, a composition major at the same school.
Uh-huh. Awesome. I love hearing people's stories, and it ties everything that you said earlier together, because we have the building blocks, we have the alchemy, the elements. That's,
Yeah,
yeah. So that all of that just makes perfect sense, and it's just beautiful to learn all of those things about you, what made you who you are today. So I read on your website where it says, I think you are you're masterful at transforming, I guess, I'm not sure I remember it correctly, but transforming uh, the daily things in life into a rich, um, you know, classical composition, but there are different flavors, obviously,
mhm.
to your compositions. Can you talk to us a little bit more about those different flavors? What sets your work apart
I
in the
see.
classical world? How do you
Right.
feel?
A few things. So because I came from mostly a praise and worship band musician.
Uh-huh.
So that was my first profession as a musician, and I learned how to read and play chords around at age 5. So uh, I already began with that kind of style fairly early in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and then that made me open to lots of other musical genres in high school. So when I had free time, I just had some transcription for fun of some jazz. Well, to be specific, actually, I transcribed a few songs by Claude Bolling because it was fascinating to me. It's a
Yeah.
jazz, but it's also classical. And it was my ear training basically. And then I transcribed a few K-pop songs before K-pop became a thing. Um, using a very, very first versions of MIDI software.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, so I was very open to navigate, of course, but my training itself was classical music. So I
Mm-hmm.
was um, open to navigating different genres. And then that led me into my next gigs as a musician, which was arrangement gigs.
Okay.
So because I was so-called verse, um, people asked me, and then it didn't sound like uh, dabbling into a fully classically trained musician dabbling into jazz, because sometimes they can tell, like
Yeah.
it's something very well thought after thought, but not perfectly natural. So that put me into that positioned me well in the market
Yeah.
among classical musician, because I was, oh, when Texu makes it, well, I had a very good education in terms of orchestration.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, and he makes it sounds good, and also he's makes it sound rather authentic into
Yes.
different genres. So I worked as an arranger for 3 4 years before I came to the States.
Mm-hmm.
And then working experiences in that field made it even fueled me to embrace a lot more genres.
Yeah.
What I didn't have that much was, ironically, Korean traditional music until
Wow.
I came to the States. I did grow up with Korean traditional music into certain um, amount. I played Korean percussion when I was young, in like fifth and sixth grade, and then we all had to go through multiple instruments, and then I grew up with a few genres that were frequently aired on on TV. So, but I forgot about it for a long time, and then when I came to the States, I became more interested in everyday life in Korea because, well, everyday life is so universal.
Yes.
So how am I different in this idea? And then further specifically, okay, well, I'm from Korea, and then my memories are different. And then, so that's where I began um, delving into, okay, Korean modern folk stuff.
Yeah.
And then in search of how it is different, I realized they have some tie into um, actual Korean folk music, or that was my thesis. And then I am still learning it. What I didn't know was how deep that genre was.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning. I'm not a scholar, so my learning pace is quite slow in this case. So, and I have to just listen and experience
Yeah.
and analyze, but still, so I'm enjoying this learning process. I feel like I have some idea about how it has informed me as a musician. But yeah, as you said, it never ends.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the another beautiful thing is, as we get more life experience, we can look back and draw from our earlier experiences and bring them into the present and maybe understand them at a deeper level, and then even transform those into different experiences. I just think there's so many beautiful things about composing, but I think, that is one of them. And music is who we are. It's life itself, in my view, and it looks like you agree with that.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah,
100%.
yeah. So I think the authenticity, you bring to your work, I'm sure, I know it speaks to people from the experience of my hearing your work. So, and it's really uplifting and wonderful. Um, is there an exciting project coming up that you want to tell us about? Or two or
Sure.
three?
Right, I'm writing pieces up to I'm thinking about mostly uh 2027, like end of 2027. That's where my schedule ends at this point, which
Yeah.
is great. I am about to have, around when this is going to be uh aired, I will have this premiere of my piece called Chimeric Suite.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a companion piece to two things. One is a new um, novel. It's not new novel, but a newly translated novel into Korean
Wow.
by French novelist who is extra popular in Korea. His name is Bernard Werber, and he has a big following in Korea. And then this newly translated book is titled Le Temps de Chimère. So chimera, the time, the era of chimeras.
Okay.
And
That sounds
then
fascinating.
it's about it's it has some sort of sci-fi vibe. It's
Uh-huh.
about post-apocalyptic world with different mutant species. Basically, that's it. So that is one companion. So this piece, Chimeric Suite, will be inter um, what is interlocked, or it will be interwoven with all these narrations. So one movement and narration and another movement and narration, they will change that way. And the novelist himself will come to Korea to read with this music. So it's exciting project.
That's very exciting. Yes.
Yes, and then that is will be followed by Strauss's Metamorphosen, and I think it's beautifully set up in that it's all about mutations and mutants, some variation of the reality. I think that's also very interesting to me because I get inspired by um, early 20th uh, paintings
Uh-huh.
when people became more interested in not what not the object but their perspectives, like a world view
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
And then so people began twisting the existing world into their own worldview, and I love that, and I that was what I was trying, combining of Vivaldi's like a Baroque style, but also with so many different flavors into it.
Wow. This has so many layers. I know we're going to have you back. We have to go deeper here. This is great.
Right. Thank you. And the piece I just finished, I will have finished, but I just finished it, is a cantata. It's
Oh,
a
wonderful.
cantata for um, a Korean Methodist Church Institute in New York City. And then it was their centennial commission. It's already 5 years past, but because of the pandemic,
Right.
but it has 100 years of uh, history, which is remarkable for a Korean church. And
Absolutely.
then a Korean
Wow.
church in New York City, and it was basically built during the Japanese colonialization time. So this church has a rich history, uh, supporting the Korean independence movement.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this cantata has a big tie into that movement. Of course, there are so many different views, so that was a difficult part, what to deliver. So I decided at the end, it's all about the communal effort to move forward into a better future. So it's about hope.
That's just, oh, that hits me so strongly because I've done just I'm not even sure I can say I've done research into that, but I know just enough about that um, era to be dangerous. But it just what hits me so beautifully about what you said is you're taking a time of such oppression and strife and making it into a time of hope and inspiration. And that, oh, that's just so wonderful. And that's the power of music, I think, and especially of, I mean, any form of music, but I think composition really opens the door to that type of transformation. And that's I don't think we could end on a much better note than that. So thank you for that.
Thank
Um,
you.
it's just been so wonderful talking to you, Texu and I first met at the Del Mar International Composer Symposium, and which I was accepted to in last summer, 2024 class. And it was wonderful working with you. And I'm so glad that we've developed this friendship. And I really can't thank you enough for coming on to our talk today. So, check back and stay tuned for our next talking shop, and we'll see you next time.